Welcome, everyone, to the Kickout Club Wrestling Podcast. My name is Tino, or Tyler, and I'm going in alone today for good reason. Earlier this week, Emil, Yusuf, and I, we put out a bonus episode of the show going in depth about WrestleMania 41. Just that one show in a vacuum, immediate reactions, predictions for what's to come. And we figured we wanted to do a show just dedicated to WrestleMania 41 because there is so much to talk about in just that show and immediate fallout alone that we wanted to allow for the next coming weeks to be our thoughts about the fallout, the Raw after WrestleMania, the SmackDown after WrestleMania, and all that good stuff. So I'm here to talk about the Raw after WrestleMania today because, going in this week, I was a little worried I wasn't going to have a whole lot to talk about going into a solo edition. But I went back and rewatched a lot of the Raw after WrestleMania, and my God, there was so much substance there, even though there was a lot of surprises and not a whole lot of in-ring action. A lot of people complaining because there were only 3 matches on the show. And I think about a half hour total of clocked in wrestling, in-ring time from bell to bell. So I'm okay with that. I like a lot of story in my wrestling. I prefer the story to be what's carrying the TV programs and the wrestling itself to carry the PLEs, to carry the big matches and moments that those stories are building to. So that's just my personal cup of tea and how I like my wrestling. So it allowed me to have a lot to talk about going into today. If you want to support us, you can do so by giving us a follow on TikTok, where we post a lot of our short form content. Also over on YouTube, we post a lot of our short form content from TikTok. That's probably the widest range of things we post there. The short form TikTok content or shorts, some extra bonus YouTube videos that are mid-length, probably about 20 to 30 minutes a piece. And then also video editions of our weekly podcast. We post videos there. So if you're listening on podcast platforms, you can give us a follow over there. You can give us a 5-star rating and a review. And you can also leave a comment if you're on Spotify listening to us. And again, if you want to check out video editions of our podcast, go over to YouTube. It's a great way to see all of our faces and be a little more immersed in the discussion. But without further ado, let's get into it. So Raw opens up with the new WWE Undisputed Champion. That's not really how you say it. I always forget the order of words. John Cena. And John Cena comes out just like he did at WrestleMania 41 with the same music, but with a blacked out Tron and just white block text saying John Cena. And as he came out with the WWE Championship, for the first time in that moment, I really started to feel like, man, this is a different era. This is a very, very different WWE without Cody as the WWE champion, without Cody Rhodes being that guy. Since Roman Reigns held the WWE championship, it's really felt like a big deal whenever this championship changes hands. Obviously, Roman held the belt for 4 years, and that was crazy. It's unprecedented. It's unheard of. And those 4 years felt really, really insane when Cody Rhodes then took the title from Roman and he became champion. But over the year that Cody Rhodes has had with this WWE title, it really felt to me like the era of Cody Rhodes was here. This was the WWE over the past year was truly the era of Cody Rhodes. He was there almost every week, sometimes on both SmackDown and Raw, not just one show per week. And he was there. He was putting on matches regularly. He had many, many defenses. He had done exactly what we had said he needed to do as WWE champion to differentiate himself from Roman Reigns, and that was show up to work. And Cody did that. Cody absolutely was there. Whether the story was super intense or it was kind of a lull period and Cody was kind of just there to beef up the card and what was happening. Absolutely crazy to see that once Cody lost the title and John Cena holding it now, it's weird to me to see John Cena holding this title. It truly does feel like whoever holds this title defines the era that we're in. And this feels like a very different era now that John Cena is the WWE champion. He comes out, announcer doing his job. I think his name is Matt Nash. I could be wrong. Something Nash. I forget if it's like Mike or Matt Nash. I think it's Matt Nash. He's very new. They gave Alicia Taylor the night off. She's usually the Raw announcer. Which, by the way, I'm not the biggest fan of Alicia Taylor, but recently I've been a huge fan, especially when Matt Nash first came in. He was a very interesting choice. He's very different from the cadence and delivery of other WWE announcers, that once he came in, it felt very weird, and I started to really appreciate Alicia Taylor's announcing skills. But he's gotten a lot better too. So he came in as the announcer for the Raw after WrestleMania, and he announces John Cena, and Cena gets angry, calls him back into the ring, hands him a card or a piece of paper folded up with a script, basically saying, it was disrespectful, my announcement, and Cena gave him a new script on how to announce him. And some of the clips were saying, never seen 17. And that's cold, man. That shit is cold. Never seen 17. Straight out of the John Cena playbook, with the low-key rhyming in there, calling him the greatest of all time, gracing us with his presence in Las Vegas is John Cena. And Cena's there drinking it in. He steps in front of Matt Nash, where it's like straight on with the hard camera, blocks him off, holds up the title. This is straight into the heel playbook, and John Cena's doing it. I didn't love this until I heard the never seen 17. That's probably the one thing that saved it for me. But it doesn't kill the promo. It's just Cena kind of going into the heel tropes of, say it again. And it's not just heels either. Like when Cody first won the title and he came out to celebrate on the Raw or SmackDown after WrestleMania 40, he had Samantha Irvin. First she announced him normally when he came out, and he was like, Samantha, say it again. And he did it as a babyface kind of way. But in a heel way, Cena kind of did it his way of saying, you disrespected me. Here's a cue card of exactly what you should be saying to announce my presence here on Monday Night Raw. So Cena does that. And then the first thing he says with the title is, winners write history. And those that watched the SmackDown promo before WrestleMania, the go-home edition of Friday Night SmackDown, you know that John Cena said that to the fans, you people don't write history. Winners do. And so it kind of comes full circle to where winners write history. Cena did what needed to be done to defeat Cody Rhodes and win the WWE Championship, whereas Cody Rhodes was too scared to act on what was needed to be done in order to retain his title, and that being hitting Cena with the belt when he had the chance. He says you don't have the courage to apologize. The crowd, that is. The crowd doesn't have the courage to apologize. He keeps going a little bit, and the crowd starts chanting, "We are sorry." And even Pat McAfee acknowledges it on commentary, saying it's sort of an olive branch from the crowd. But Cena actually flips it. He tries to translate it and flip the script. So he goes, if you can't hear that at home, that's them saying we aren't sorry. And at first I was like, oh, come on, man. Like, they're trying to force a story that's not true. But no, it's just Cena being the delusional heel that he is. And even if he does know full well what they're saying, he doesn't want the fans at home to know that they're on his side. He's doing everything that he can to be booed, despite the cheering that the Las Vegas crowd kept giving him. Eventually, they start calling him an asshole because of this, and he drinks in those asshole chants. He is standing there, arms out, eyes closed, just like this, leaning back into it as I look at myself to see what I look like. Actually, I'm going to turn off the preview here. I always forget to turn that off. But that being said, Cena's sitting there drinking in the asshole chants, reveling in the hatred from the fans. And then Cena says that there's only a few dates left. And up on the Tron, there's a graphic that says 36 dates in those same white block text. And he goes, that's how many I told you I would do in my retirement year in 2025. He rattles off each of the dates that he's already appeared. The fans do what after every one, which is a whole other story. But Cena specifies that these are just appearances. He doesn't have to wrestle at all of them. He just has to show up and do this and talk trash, preach his gospel to the fans. Cena calls them out for constantly booing and flip-flopping on not only himself, but Cody Rhodes as well. He brings up Cody, and the fans boo Cody, the name of Cody, the mention of Cody Rhodes. And Cena's like, this is the problem. This is exactly the problem with all of you. constant booing and flip-flopping, saying you cheered him last week and then you booed him on Friday. And then you booed him at WrestleMania and then you cheered him again. Or something like that. He said you booed it, or no, it was last Friday you booed him and then you cheered him again, and then at WrestleMania you booed him. So the crowd constantly is just, especially the Vegas crowd in particular, constantly being worked by John Cena. They are being worked, as I like to say to Emil to bust his balls. He's working the crowd like Play-Doh. He's got them in his hand. And he says there's nobody in WWE with the speed, with the strength, with the wisdom, or the ruthless aggression of John Cena. And at that point, first off, in the moment, I was like, whoa, he did the thing. He said a ruthless aggression. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And I didn't even think about it until after I rewatched this segment, what that foreshadowing really meant. Cena saying that nobody in the current space of WWE can match up to him. Nobody that is currently in WWE in this new era of talent, associated with this new era of talent, can match WWE. Or can match John Cena, excuse me. Nobody in the company can match John Cena. Kind of a nod saying the Ruthless Aggression era came out and put out some fantastic stars, better stars. And then all of a sudden Cena says, get your cameras out. You know, this is a great photo opportunity. I have a heart. I'm going to do something nice for you. And he's basically about to give him a photo op. And then Randy Orton slithers in the ring, slides in the ring from behind him, comes in from the out of frame. I don't know why it was so difficult to say that. Orton came in from out of frame, sneaks up behind Cena, turns him around. Cena goes, shit, in the microphone right when Orton jumps up and hits the RKO. And then Randy Orton picks up the title and holds it up and gives it back to Cena on the ground. Nobody in WWE has the strength, the wisdom, or the ruthless aggression of John Cena. But you know who does? Somebody that came up in the ruthless aggression with John Cena. Randy Orton. Cena came up. Cena, Batista, Randy Orton all kind of came up and had their massive push to the main event scene at the same time. Orton kind of had it a little earlier than the rest, but it didn't really work out to the fullest extent until Cena and Batista's pushes also worked out. And so Cena, Orton, and Batista are kind of three figures to me that really defined the Ruthless Aggression era and then moved into the PG era, carrying that era. You know, the rise of the three of them. By the time the end of the Ruthless Aggression era came, they were at the top of their respective divisions, their respective shows. So by the time the PG era came in just after that, they were able to carry it. They were able to hard carry WWE in that era. That nod to Ruthless Aggression of John Cena. Maybe I'm reaching, but it seemed to me like it was a straight up foreshadowing that Randy Orton was going to come up and make his move on John Cena. And now it seems like in the year of 2025, we are going to see, for the WWE Championship, a heel John Cena defended against a face Randy Orton. How insane is that? That is crazy stuff. That stuff, listen, it's crazy enough that these guys are wrestling again in 2025, this late into both of their careers, but it's even crazier that the script is flipped and Cena is the heel and Randy is the face. It's so synonymous with John Cena being the babyface that now that he's the heel in this retirement run, it opens up the door to so many new possibilities with Cena facing other faces in a legitimate feud. It's absolutely insane to see. All signs are pointing to the two of them coming to a head at Backlash in St. Louis. That's Randy Orton's hometown, by the way. John Cena and Randy Orton in Randy Orton's hometown. Orton going in as the babyface, Cena going in as the heel. WWE found the perfect opportunity to make sure that Cena is booed in this context. And to me, all signs point to CM Punk coming up after that. And I'm not sure what comes up after CM Punk, but We have a couple shows between Backlash and SummerSlam. And Clash in Paris could very well be the match where we get Cena versus Styles for the title. Because we know how synonymous AJ Styles is with France. So, all signs point to that. The WWE title picture, although is very different than what it was before, it's absolutely thriving. And I am so looking forward to seeing where this goes with John Cena at the helm of WWE as a heel. And I look forward to seeing what happens with Cody Rhodes now that he has a new path to forge without a title for the first time in over a year. We haven't seen a Cody Rhodes without a title for a while. And even when he didn't have that title, it seemed like it was bound to happen for him to come in and have that journey to the title. And now that he won it and the journey is over, and the honeymoon phase from the end of the journey is also over now, and he has no title, what happens to Cody when he comes back? How is he going to be different? And how is he going to grow and evolve with the times? Because I think this feud with John Cena may have bred some Cody haters. Even more so than before. Because the before it was a very silent minority. But I think hearing such a massive crowd at WrestleMania and in Las Vegas booing Cody Rhodes throughout the weekend is going to embolden a lot of people to feel the same way and start to express their feelings in the same way. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more Cody hate. So I think Cody is going to have to change some things about his character in order to adapt and adjust to that. How we get there, I don't really know. If y'all saw The Rock interview on the Pat McAfee show after WrestleMania, you know that he talked about the plan being, at first, one of the plans, being that at Elimination Chamber, Cody Rhodes was going to turn heel and sell his soul to The Rock. But they decided not to do that. They decided not to. They also talked about after Cody lost the WWE Championship, past tense, that the future was going to be a journey to him getting the title back and also a heel turn down the road. How true is what Rock is saying on the Pat McAfee show? How true is it? Is Cody going to take a journey to redeem himself and win the title back as a babyface and then turn heel? Or lose the title first and then turn heel? Personally, I think I would like to see Cena hold this belt to the end of the year. The end of the year, Cena has one last match in Boston for the WWE title with Cody Rhodes. It's built up through the entire year as I smack the microphone, so I apologize if that was a little bit of a tough moment for y'all, especially headphone listeners. But that I digress. It'd be crazy to see if throughout the entire year of 2025, we have Cena as a heel champion and Cody Rhodes taking a hero's redemption journey. He finally wins number one contendership, however he gets to it. He wins an opportunity against John Cena. And it's John Cena and Cody Rhodes, Cena's last match in Boston for the title. Cena's going to be a heel no matter what. Or a face, excuse me. I can't even talk. Cena's going to be a face no matter what. Cena's going to be a face in that match no matter what because it's in Boston. It's his hometown. And it's the end of the year. It's his last match. No one's going to want to boo John Cena in his last match. And you have it against Cody Rhodes, the biggest face in the company, who's going to get booed. And I think Cody then does what needs to be done. I think that's when Cody finally does what needs to be done to win the title from John Cena. And you know what I think is going to happen? I think he might do something heelish, and I think the crowd's going to turn on him. Then you have, coming out of that, Cody beats John Cena. And everyone thinks, John Cena being a heel will allow him to put over the next big baby face, right? Wrong. I think this is going to be to put over Cody as the big heel at the end of this year, going into WrestleMania 42. Cody is WWE champion. Heel. You can have Rock in it. You can not have Rock in it. At this point, personally, with how I feel about The Rock and how in and out he's been, keep him the hell out of here. Cody does what needs to be done. He cheats to beat John Cena in his hometown. He wins the WWE Championship in Boston, sends Cena packing off into the sunset to end his career. And Cody is now the big bad heel in 2025, going into 2026 as the WWE Champion. Then we run back all the good shit. Then we run back Cody Roman. We can get Cody Rock eventually if we want to. Man, but Cody and Orton, heel Cody versus a face Orton, could be interesting too. A heel Cody versus face CM Punk. I think I might be onto something here. Moving on to a different story here coming out of WrestleMania. As you know, we have new women's tag team champions. Becky Lynch makes her return at WrestleMania 41 after Bayley was attacked before the show. It was supposed to be Bayley and Lyra Valkyria, who is the Women's Intercontinental Champion, by the way, challenging the defending champions Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez for the women's tag team titles. So Lyra is left without a partner going into the match. And it's said that she'll have a partner. It's a mystery partner, Lyra and a mystery, against Liv and Raquel. And by the way, fuck WWE for doing that. Fuck them for doing that. Bayley deserved a match at WrestleMania, and it's a damn shame she didn't get one. Last year, she won the Royal Rumble, won the opportunity to challenge for the women's title at WrestleMania 40, had a phenomenal story with Io Sky, had a phenomenal match with Io Sky, won the WWE women's title, had a shit reign, but whatever. Bayley is phenomenal. She's one of the best faces to get behind in a chase for the title. She's one of the best heels to get behind in any situation. Could be a chase, could be a championship reign. She's fantastic. And she was perfectly healthy and capable of wrestling. And WWE chose to write her off. Why? Because Becky Lynch came back to replace her. And I love Becky Lynch too. Becky Lynch is one of the best. I have a shirt. I have one of the man's shirts from the big WrestleMania 35 run. Phenomenal run. But that was horrible. I hated that for Bayley. It makes me resent Becky, and I don't want to resent Becky. I understood why they did it, though. Let's talk about why they did it. There is a silver lining in this. There is good storytelling in Becky Lynch returning to team with Lyra. And that is because all throughout, before Becky stepped away from wrestling for a while, Becky and Lyra had just come up to Raw from NXT, and Becky had kind of taken Lyra under her wing, no pun intended, Lyra being a bird-centric wrestler, loving birds. Becky took Lyra under her wing and kind of acted as a mentor to Lyra, and because they also are both Irish women in WWE, both from Ireland. Makes perfect sense to me. They were a cool pairing. I love to see that, right? So to see Becky and Lyra teaming was kind of the next step in that story, albeit months and months later down the road. It's kind of forgotten at this point, but I didn't forget. I remember. There is important context to this. There is logic behind it. It's not just a willy-nilly pairing. Sure, fine, right? They beat Liv and Raquel for the tag team titles at WrestleMania. Okay, a very weird choice. I don't really like it. I think Liv deserved a WrestleMania moment. Not just a match, a moment. And we had just come off Dominic Mysterio winning the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania. How cool would it have been to have a moment with Raquel, Dom, and Liv all celebrating with new championship gold around their waist at WrestleMania? You can have Carlito and Finn in there too, the rest of Judgment Day. Sure, that's great. But man, it would have been such a cool moment for them. They're carrying the heel ranks on Monday Night Raw, for sure. Liv Morgan was literally voted Women's Wrestler of the Year in the Slammy Awards, which is a fan vote. It's clear that there is value in Liv Morgan. She is one of the best women's wrestlers right now. Not in the ring, but from a character perspective. And she can hold her own in the ring, too. She's not phenomenal, but she can hold her own. And she's had good matches and is a good wrestler. She's just not one of the best around, and that's fine. In WWE particularly, you don't need to be the best in the ring, and it's a whole different discussion. But But Liv and Raquel in particular were so deserving of having a WrestleMania moment, and it was taken away from them because Becky Lynch was ready to come back. That's pretty much it when you think about it and you boil it down to that. It's just because Becky was back and ready to come back. So Becky and Lyra beat Liv and Raquel and win the titles on WrestleMania Sunday. 24 hours later, probably even less, on Monday Night Raw, they have a rematch for the tag titles with Liv and Raquel, with Becky and Lyra defending. So, to set the stage, from the night before, Becky got the pin, I believe, on Liv. I could be wrong, but the more important thing is Becky got the pin to win the titles. The Raw after WrestleMania, the night after, they're defending the titles, their newly won titles, against Liv and Raquel. Cool. This time, Lyra eats the pin from Liv. Somehow, Lyra's caught in a moment for Liv to hit Oblivion and get the clean win and win the titles back. Okay. We really hot-shotted the titles for one night just to have a WrestleMania moment for Becky? How many WrestleMania moments has Becky Lynch had? Multiple. And she doesn't need many more. In my opinion, Becky had a WrestleMania moment last year when she lost to Rhea Ripley at Mania 40. When she had that sick-ass entrance with the words from her own book written all over her gear and on the AR book that was on the stage, and the special entrance they used where they had clips from her reading excerpts of her book before her music hit. That was a cool-ass moment and a great match with Rhea. And yeah, she lost, but it was still really, really cool. And for me, a landmark moment in Becky's career. And Mania 35, how can we forget winning the main event of WrestleMania, the last one-night WrestleMania? Did she really need another one? Another Mania moment? So anyway, Lyra loses the belts for them. And Becky comes in the ring and is consoling Lyra. And then she turns and she snaps and she starts beating her up. And the crowd was actually surprised. Nobody else was surprised. Commentary was almost silent. Normally when a turn happens, you hear Michael Cole, "Oh, whoa, what's going on here? What is she doing? Becky, what are you doing? Becky, come on. Becky, what's going on?" They don't stop talking about it. This time they just go, "Oh," and she hits her the first time. And then like maybe 20 seconds later, Michael's like, "What is she doing?" Like, they didn't even pretend to be surprised. And even after the fans got over the initial shock of the heel turn, they start cheering her anyway. It just wasn't good. It didn't work. It did not work. And then Lyra looking scared. Listen, I understand the shock of, "You're supposed to be my friend. What's going on here? Why are you doing this to me? You're supposed to be my friend." I totally understand that. But after a while, you're a tough woman, Lyra. You're the Women's Intercontinental Champion. You can't even pretend to be angry a little bit? It just doesn't work for me. It just doesn't feel rational for me. It doesn't feel logical for me from any perspective. Some people are overacting. Some people are underacting. Becky's just going through the motions, it feels like. And so Liv and Raquel are back to where they were before WrestleMania as the heel tag team champions, albeit now a little weaker for no reason at all. And Becky and Lyra are set up for this feud that could have totally avoided them winning the titles to begin with. We could have had Lyra eat the pin at WrestleMania. She already doesn't look that strong as Intercontinental Champion anyway. And then you have Becky turn heel at WrestleMania. That would have been a bigger moment. That would have been one of the big moments that would have been on the WrestleMania highlight packages. That would have been more substantial than just the two of them beating Liv and Raquel and holding up the belts. And it would have made the tag titles look stronger. It would have made Liv and Raquel look stronger. It's just so silly. And it makes the women's tag titles look even worse. Even worse than they already did. Overall, it's a right move in the long term that was executed incredibly poorly in the short term. Incredibly poorly. But it's fine. It's not like any matches were bad. Listen, there was no bad wrestling. There was nothing that had me like, why the fuck are they doing this? It's just they got to the point that I like in a complete wrong way. It's fine. Sometimes there are misses. This is one of them. Speaking of misses, this is more like a near miss. Because, like, overall, I'm happy about this. But it's so close to being a miss for me. Out next are the new World Tag Team Champions, The New Day. They're cutting a promo, bragging about, we're the champions now. Typical heel new champion stuff. And then the music of Alpha Babes hits. Alpha Academy. Otis, Tozawa, and Maxine. And Maxine actually brings up logical points here. She's the mouthpiece for the two guys, for Tozawa and Otis. Totally cool. So, at this point, Maxine is like, before you beat War Raiders for the titles, before you beat them, Alpha Babes beat you guys. So logic tells us that if Alpha Babes beat you before you were the champions and now you are the champions, that Alpha Babes deserve a title shot. New Day denies it, and then Maxine's like, are you scared? Are you scared to defend your titles? And of course, the egotistical New Day are like, no, we're not. In fact, we'll do it right now. Let's do it right now. Their ego was shot, so they decided they were going to overcompensate and offer us title shot right now. The night after WrestleMania. So they're squaring up in the ring. They're in their respective corners. The ref's in the ring. They're about to ring the bell, and the lights drop. Some weird sounds play. Some like energy sound, whatever. I don't know. And then music hits that we're not familiar with. And on the Tron, you see a face from like here up and the name Rusev. It's Rusev Day, baby. Rusev is back on WWE television. And it's great. It's great. Seeing Rusev back on TV was really cool. He looks fantastic. He's shredded. He looks leaner, but he looks just as built as he did before. He's bald now, as he looked in AEW as Miro. He came out by himself, no Lana. We'll see if she makes her way back to television to be his valet. But Rusev comes out. New Day's like, no, we're out of here. We're not here. We don't want this smoke. And so Rusev comes out before the bell rings and takes out Alpha Academy, Alpha Babes. And it's cool. The fans are popping it. He's hitting all his moves. He put Tozawa in the accolade, and wow, I cannot speak. He put Tozawa in the accolade, the camel clutch. We got a cool square up with Rusev and Otis. That was really cool. I'm looking forward to that. I'm sure we're gonna get that match probably in the next week or so. Maybe a handicap match with Alpha Babes and Rusev. Super cool to see this. Super cool that Rusev's back. I hope that they don't blunder him like they did in the first run. The crowd clearly did not forget about Rusev Day. They did not stop cheering it. So I really hope that they do tap into that. If they have him, be a babyface at some point. But clearly here they wanted him to be a big monster heel. And that's fine. That's cool. So maybe we'll get Rusev Day at some point in the future. There's something to be said that Matt Raywalt, the former commentator for TNA, also was a free agent. He tweeted that shortly after Rusev debuted. So there is a possibility to pair Aiden English with him again for Rusev Day. But overall, the reason it's a near miss is because it's a cool moment, but it continues to bury the Raw tag team division that's quite literally floundering. Quite literally floundering. The only thing that was redeeming about the Redeemer. The only thing redeeming about the Raw tag division coming out of WrestleMania was the fact that New Day are the champions. And we know that New Day can wrestle very well. They're great characters, and they're cool heels. And there's a couple of heel teams on Raw that could really benefit from a feud with the New Day. And it also does a whole lot of nothing for Rusev. What does it do for him to beat up a bunch of tag team guys that have nothing to do with him? If he's a singles guy, he's not going to be crossing paths with any of them anyway. If he's going for a mid-card title, he's facing people in the mid-card. So he's facing people like Dominic. He's facing people like Finn Balor. He's facing people like Penta, like Ludwig Kaiser, like Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, those kind of people. So it's a little weird to see him beat up a bunch of guys that it really doesn't really matter if he beats them up. But it really matters to them how they look. So hopefully the Raw tag division can recover. The good thing is there wasn't really that far further down they could have been taken by a Rusev beatdown. So that's cool at least. But this does set up a lot of cool matches coming up with Rusev. We have a couple of things we can do with Rusev now. Rusev versus Gunther. Rusev versus Bronson Reed. Rusev versus Braun Breaker. Rusev versus Ilya Dragunov when he returns. That would be super cool to see. Rusev versus Ludwig Kaiser. Rusev versus Sheamus. That would be so cool to see. So I'm really glad Rusev's back. I'm hoping for the best for him, wishing him the best on his return to WWE. Obviously, we have a couple more returns on the way. Obviously, this Friday, it's been hinted at that there's going to be a new wrestler coming to SmackDown. The rumor is that it's Aleister Black. It looks very possible, very likely that it is Aleister Black. I'm not going to say it is because while it does look like him and gun to my head, I tell you it is, we don't know. And I'm not going to hitch my cart to that horse. That's the phrase. I'm not gonna hitch my cart to that horse unless I know 100%. Speaking of people making surprise appearances, Io Sky comes out, the women's world champion, bragging about how she retained her women's world title. Super cool for Io. I'm so happy that she retained the title over Rhea and Bianca. I'm sad that Bianca's the one getting booed, but it is what it is. So Io comes out and she's celebrating her WrestleMania title win, and she's interrupted by an interesting name. None other than the NXT Women's Champion, Stephanie Vaquer, who's doing fantastic work as the Women's Champion over down in NXT. She was the first double champion in the women's division since Mandy Rose, I believe. She was the Women's North American Champion as well as the Women's Champion until for some reason they decided to retcon it and make her vacate the North American title, which was won by Sol Ruca. Very cool for Sol Ruca. But Stephanie comes out and basically says, I'm the women's champion of NXT. I'm looking to face the best. And I'm here to show you respect because you are the best. And so I want to challenge you to a match. And Io accepts. The match is set up on this Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania. We got an impromptu match. Champion versus champion. Women's World Champion Io Sky versus NXT Women's Champion Stephanie Vaquer. I know Santi's app was freaking out at this one because it's his number 1 and number 2 female wrestlers in the world. Good for him. Happy for him. Couldn't stop thinking about him while this match was happening. But I digress. The match was fantastic for what it was. But obviously, you can't really have one women's champion pin another one because you don't want the losing women's champion to look weak. So they went for a DQ finish. Roxanne Perez, who's kind of been treading the line between NXT and Monday Night Raw full-time, took out Stephanie Vaquer for the DQ. They've been feuding down in NXT. Roxanne had been gunning for a rematch with Stephanie. She had one scheduled for the following night's NXT. So she came out and took out Stephanie Vaquer. Julia then enters, who is now a heel. And Roxanne and Julia attack Io and Stephanie. And then eventually Rhea Ripley makes the save. And Rhea Ripley comes out, makes the save, and then she does this moment where she picks up the women's title. She looks at it. She looks at Io, and she's like, he gives it to Io, and she's like, I'm coming for this. So we are going to see a rematch between Io and Rhea for the women's world title. As expected, unfortunately, I was hoping that Bianca would get another shot at Io one-on-one, but it's fine. I personally am not a big fan of Rhea right now because of how childish and whiny she acted in the build-up to the WrestleMania 41 match, the triple threat. But it's okay. Rhea's still cool. I still love Rhea generally. Just not a huge fan at the moment. One cool moment we also got from this was that Stephanie and Julia had a little bit of a stare down at the end of this segment before Julia backed off and left the ring. And that was really cool. So we've gotten stare downs between a lot of cool people in this. We got Stephanie and Io. We got Roxanne and Rhea. We got Julia and Rhea. So many combinations that we can play with in the future. I'm looking forward to it. There was also some speculation that this loosely could be the way we set up the Evolution 2 pay-per-view, PLE. If you're not familiar with the Evolution PLE, it's the all-women's pay-per-view that WWE held a few years ago. It was pretty cool. It was a pretty stacked card. If you're a fan of women's wrestling, it was a pretty stacked card. But there were rumors this year that they can confirm that show to be happening in early July, I believe in Connecticut, at a casino in Connecticut, Mohegan Sun. I have access to get there, so I may have to go to that show if it's happening at Mohegan Sun Arena. But I'll let you know. I'm already trying to go to SummerSlam, so we'll see how that goes. But that being said, I think it'd be a great way to set up the pay-per-view. I think it'd be a great way to set up that show. And I think that Evolution 2 is long overdue. I'm shocked they didn't continue doing Evolution as a show moving forward, even if they made it every other year. Not every. They don't need to make it annual. They could do every other year, biannual. But it is what it is. Any Evolution is better than no Evolution pay-per-view, in my opinion. So good for the women. Fantastic stuff. Stephanie did go on to defend the title successfully against Roxanne Perez. Looks like we're setting up now Stephanie and Julia again, potentially with Jordynne Grace in the mix. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes down in NXT. The next segment, I have mixed feelings about. And I feel like I have a lot of mixed feelings about a lot of stuff on this show, but it's okay. Overall, I think this one was pretty good. Overall, I think this segment was good. New World Heavyweight Champion Jey Uso, or as it says on the shirt, World Heavy Yeet Champion Jey Uso, comes out through the crowd once again with the World Heavyweight title in hand. As you know, he just beat Gunther in the opening match of WrestleMania 41, Night 1, to win the World Heavyweight Championship after winning the Royal Rumble this year. He gets in the ring, really, really cool moment where the crowd is chanting one more time, one more time. This crowd was hot, really hot for Jey Uso. So, super cool. I was worried that they weren't going to be because Jey Uso has been the babyface that gets the rocket strapped to them and the fans don't like it for whatever reason. So, he gets in the ring, the crowd's chanting one more time, and Jay's like, one more time? Okay. And they have him play the music again. The guy in the truck plays the music again. He jumps up on the turnbuckle, and at that moment, the fans lit up. They exploded. His entrance music plays again. They yeet some more. Pat's hilarious here. He's like, go ahead, sneak a little yeet in there. Yeah, you can always sneak a little yeet in there, can't you? Like he kills it in that role. Not always, but that is a good Pat McAfee moment. Jey Uso's doing the usual stuff, thanking everybody. He's the champ, whatever. And then Sami Zayn comes out. This is the first time we've seen Sami Zayn since the unsanctioned match with Kevin Owens at Elimination Chamber Toronto. Sorry. Yusuf and my Canadian friends out there that are listening are going to hate that I said Toronto. And immediately I'm like, oh, what if Sami turns right now? What if Sami turns heel right now? That would be so sick, but also heartbreaking at the same time. And then there was a moment where, Sami comes out first off and he's like, I couldn't think of a better person to be the champion right now. I am so immensely happy for you. You are my brother. You deserve this. You are incredible. And you're going to have a great run with that title. And then they start to play the music again and start to yeet some more. And Jay's yeeting on the turnbuckle, and and Sammy's standing in the ring just watching Jay do it. And he's standing really, really close to Jay. And a lot of people online were speculating that Sammy's going to turn. I wasn't the only one. And everyone's still talking about how it was surprising that he didn't. So the yeeting continues. Sammy's watching Jay yeet on the turnbuckle. Jay comes back down, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to kick him. He's going to kick him. He's going to kick him. And then he doesn't kick him. And then Jimmy Uso comes out. And I thought Jimmy was going to say something too. It was already a really long segment. And I was like, oh man, now Jimmy's going to say something. Thankfully he didn't, but I also feel bad that he didn't because he's literally Jay's brother. And I thought he would say something too, but he didn't. It's just the three of them do a group hug. They do their handshake that they had in the bloodline. And it's just a big old celebration, big old yeet fest for Jey Uso winning the world title. It did run a little long. The segment did run a little long. And I really thought it was going to set up a world title match between Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. It didn't in this moment, but I think that we are eventually going to get it. We may just get it face versus face too. So we'll see how that goes. But I do think overall this was a well-deserved segment for Jay. I think that this segment in particular was the seal of approval, the right of confidence, the vote of confidence for Jay. Not only him beating Gunther, but I think at that point, after he won the Rumble and went through the motions from Rumble to Mania, he kind of had to beat Gunther at that point. And this is the time where it was like, this is why we did it. This is why we did it. Jay's our guy. He's going to be our guy. You're going to love him. We know you already do. I'm happy for Jey Uso. This was a fun time. And I look forward to see where Jey Uso goes as World Heavyweight Champion. I was strongly thinking that Braun Breaker was going to be his first feud. But we'll see how we'll see where we go with Braun Breaker. He's coming. He's coming. Don't worry. Don't worry. By the way, I usually don't always go in order of the show, but this show in particular, every segment had something to talk about. So that's why I'm kind of going in order of the show this time. When there's less substance, I don't always. But this time, there is a lot of stuff to talk about here. The next segment, we come back from commercial break, and Gunther's outside in street clothes. He's outside the ring and yelling at Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, trying to challenge them. Like, he's pissed at them for saying stuff about him on commentary, talking about him, and he's like saying, there's something you want to say to me, huh? Like, say it. Say it to me. And Cole's like, Gunther, like, he's trying to de-escalate him. He's like, Gunther, relax. But then he says the least de-escalating thing he could have possibly said, saying, Gunther, I understand, but I'm not the one who tapped out. Cole, why the fuck would you say that? To a guy who's already fuming, who's double your size, coming at you, this close to your face, and you say, I'm not the one who tapped out. That's the whole reason why he's pissed at you, bro. So Gunther's pissed. He goes to beat up Michael Cole. He puts Cole in the sleeper, and then Pat McAfee gets up, and he runs in, and he punches Gunther pretty good. And then eventually, there's security that gets in between, Gunther and Cole and Pat. Gunther's on one side, Pat's on the other. Pat's thinking, all right, we're good here. Everyone's separated. We're calmed down. He turns around. Gunther then runs by everybody and grabs Pat McAfee and puts him in the sleeper hold. So sick. Everyone's freaking out. Pat McAfee's podcast co-hosts are jumping the barricade trying to get involved, and security has to hold them back too because they're technically not supposed to be involved. They have to be treated like fans. Also, it's probably dangerous for them to try to step up to Gunther, or at least it should be, given the context of wrestling being like these over-the-top, super strong guys that are like superhuman strong. So they try to free Pat from Gunther's clutches. It doesn't work. Gunther has Pat in the death grip and puts him to sleep. And then eventually Gunther is shoved off and he leaves through the crowd. The crowd's booing. And then Pat wakes up a few minutes later and he's slowly walking out of the ring. And it's like, bruh, move. Or like, find something to cut the camera to. Something. We don't need to watch this whole thing. Pat's slowly being walked to the back. And he's like choking and whatever, right? Pat's doing his thing. And we go to break again, and we come back, and he's still walking. He's still being followed to the back. He's walking through the backstage area. Now they get him to the doctor. It's Cole, it's Pat, it's Adam Pearce, it's all the producers, it's the security. They get him in medical. They shut the door in the doctor's office. And then Adam's like, Cole, take the rest of the night off, whatever. And Michael Cole's like, I'm not going to have a bully prevent me from doing my job. But then he's also like, this bully is preventing us from doing our job. Something's got to be done about this. Like, Cole, which is it? Do you want to complain that Gunther can't be stopped? Or do you want to stand up to Gunther showing that he's not affecting you? I think it would have been more effective if he went home and they had just Joe Tess on the rest of the feed. However, not the biggest fan of Joe Tess. It's bad already having him on the feed. I know I'm in the minority. Sorry, just not a huge fan. Respect the game though. He's fantastic. He's clearly has a good resume. I'm happy about anybody being employed and having a job, but I think there are better commentators. But anyway, they had Joe Tess ready to fill in solo for the rest of the night. And then Cole's like, yeah, no, I'm going to do my job. This guy's not going to stop me from doing my job. When he was just complaining that, like, this guy's stopping me from doing my job. Like, how are we supposed to do this? It just didn't make sense to me. The logic doesn't make sense. Spent way too much time on this. We could have cut the walk to the back. We could have cut from walking him from the ring where he was choking. And, like, when he started to turn down the ramp, we could have cut to commercial, had a commercial, came back. He was in the doctor's office, and they had this conversation. But they decided not to do that. Where do we go? What does this mean? Is Pat going to wrestle? I think the answer is no. I think that this is just to have Gunther have a story in between Jay and his next story where he's kind of unraveling at the seams, taking it out on other people. No one is safe from Gunther. He's a big monster. It's a way to make Gunther look dangerous and unhinged again without putting it at the expense of other wrestlers. And I also think it's a great way to write Pat McAfee off TV. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think he does kind of have an off season after Big Four pay-per-views. He comes back, a couple months leading up to every Big Four. SummerSlam, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble. He's usually back at Royal Rumble and Survivor Series. And even then, Survivor Series, he's sometimes not even at Survivor Series either. So, pretty cool. Pretty cool segment. I liked it. I just thought it was a little drawn out. I get the impact. Someone said on Twitter that it's very impactful to keep talking about this whole thing that happened with Pat being attacked by Gunther. There are people that were like, "Oh, this is way too much. Like we're hearing it too much." I don't think so. And someone said on Twitter that it's like this should be made a giant deal that a wrestler put his hands on non-wrestler personnel, especially commentators. Commentators aren't supposed to be jacked. They aren't supposed to be built. Some of them are muscular, but they're not all the ways supposed to be built. Maybe Wade Barrett is. Maybe Booker T is a little strong. Those are former wrestlers. Maybe Pat too, but he's a former kicker. But Michael Cole is just a guy. Joe Tess is just a guy. You ever see him stand next to Wade? He's so small in comparison to Wade Barrett. Corey Graves even. He was a former wrestler. He was forced to retire from wrestling at least, and then they put him on commentary. So he might be a little larger too. But that being said, commentators should not have hands put on them, period. It is a huge deal when wrestlers put their hands on commentators, and it should be treated as such every single time. But sometimes it did become a little fatiguing when every 5 seconds Joe Tess is like, "Are you all right, Michael? Are you all right?" Under his breath every 5 minutes. Are you going to do okay, Michael? Are you all right? Like, so distracting. It ended up I understand wanting to harp on it in between segments and when things aren't happening that are substantive, right? But when things are happening on screen, like other matches, other stories are playing out, and you have Joe Tess going, "Michael, is everything okay over there? You doing okay?" Like, it's just distracting. When it's distracting from other stories, I don't like that. I don't find it very fair to other stories as well. But it's fine. Like I said, cool story. It was very impactful. Clearly, it was felt. Clearly, they wanted to make a big deal of it, as it should be. take it for what you will. It's the start of a story. We'll see where it goes. It wasn't bad. It was just not done. It was just done a little overdone. A little overdone. We get to the last wrestling match of the night, the third match of the evening. And we have Dominic Mysterio defending the Intercontinental Championship against Penta one-on-one. And at that point going in, I was like, yo, Finn's going to turn on Dom right now, isn't he? We're going to get another 24-hour hot shot, aren't we? Because I went into the Fatal 4-Way thinking Penta was going to win the title. I'll save that explanation for why. Long story short, I didn't think Dom versus Finn needed a title, and that was the perfect launching pad, I thought, to get that story going. But instead, they want to draw it out a little more. It's the MO for WWE these days to draw out things as long as they can to kind of not blow their load on every story at one time, and that's totally fair. But I really thought that moment was like, Finn's going to cost Dominic, Penta's going to win the title, we're going to get Finn and Dom non-title feud, and then Penta's going to take the IC title and feud with somebody else. Maybe Rusev, maybe Ludwig, maybe Braun again. So Dominic retains the title when JD McDonough returns to make the save, to interfere, to cost Penta the match. And listen, JD's got a pop, man. JD got a pop from the crowd when he came back because the fans he has earned the fans' respect when he had that giant spot where he hit his head on the announce table and got a concussion. Or it was broken ribs when they thought he was concussed. It was scary. If you didn't see it and you want to see it, if you're squeamish, don't. But if you want to see it, go check it out. It's pretty gnarly. But so glad that JD's good. So glad that he didn't have to spend a whole lot of time on the shelf. Sad he had to miss WrestleMania, but at least he was there to reunite with his family, help Dominic defeat Penta to retain the Intercontinental Championship. All is well in the Judgment Day if you're not named Finn Balor. Because everybody's celebrating with their titles. Liv and Raquel and Dom with their titles, and Carlito's there because he's, of course, JD's back now. Everyone's so happy to see JD back. And then Finn is just like, you can see it on his face. He's pissed. He's not having a good time. But Judgment Day's fine otherwise. You know, Finn was the one going in saying, as long as the title's with the Judgment Day, everyone wins. But Finn didn't expect Dominic to be the one holding the title on the way out of WrestleMania. And I think it's going to grow. This resentment towards Dominic is going to grow from Finn Balor, and we are going to eventually get a turn. And I really do think that Finn is going to be the heel. How we break up Judgment Day is a fun story. People were talking about the potential of a Civil War type of story where it's Dom, Liv, and Raquel break off and do their thing. Maybe Carlito. And Finn and JD go and do their thing. Maybe Carlito's with them, with Finn and JD. Or maybe Carlito's just in the middle. I kind of think Carlito should just be in the middle of that. But that being said, JD did just help Dominic. Is Finn just going to leave Judgment Day as a whole and go solo? Because obviously he and JD have strong ties, right? He trained JD McDonough. They were former Raw Tag Champions, or World Tag Champions, I should say. So there is a chance that JD flips again and flips back to the side of Finn Balor. But we'll see where that goes. And I think the title match eventually that we get, one-on-one, Dominic versus Finn, will be really, really great for that Intercontinental title. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. And I hope Penta maintains his standing in the pecking order and maintains his status as a solid mid-card staple moving forward, because it was really cool he got a WrestleMania moment. I'm glad that he didn't eat the pin, but I'm sad that he didn't get the title, because I really thought that was the moment to really give a stamp of approval on Penta and say, this is a guy we're going to focus on moving forward. Because we had both Lucha Brothers at WrestleMania 41, Phoenix on night 1 and Penta on night 2, and they both lost. But we'll see, not everybody wins their first WrestleMania, and that's fine. I'm a big proponent of that. I was a big proponent when we had a lot of debuts in the Vince era. They would always win their first match, and I'm like, why does everyone have to win their first match? If you're debuting in a company where everyone's fucking fantastic, it makes sense to maybe lose your first match and can open up a variety of storytelling from there. And now we get to the main event of the show, the last segment. And I gotta say, this story in particular, one of my all-time favorite stories coming out of WrestleMania 41. And that is the story coming out of night one's main event, the triple threat of Roman Reigns, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins, where Paul Heyman decided to screw over Roman and Punk, betray them both, and side with Seth Rollins to close the show and give him the win. Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman come out together, and they say a little bit where Seth starts talking a little bit. It's not a whole lot of substance before CM Punk's music hits. And he comes out and he's too angry to talk. He starts swinging. He attacks Paul and Seth. He gets the best of both of them. He beats down Seth a bit. He goes to turn his attention to Paul Heyman. Seth comes up from behind, rakes Punk's eyes, and then he turns it around and wins the fight with CM Punk. At that point, Paul says there's a new top star in the industry. And Roman comes out and clears Seth Rollins at that point. Roman goes to spear Paul Heyman, and there's no Seth to save Paul this time. But then Roman does the ooh-ah, and he goes to spear him, but he gets beaten to the punch with another spear. This guy's in a black hoodie, hood up. We can't see who he is. He stands up, takes the hood off. It's Braun fucking Breaker. Braun Breaker spears Roman Reigns in the main event of Monday Night Raw. And the crowd went ballistic. I went ballistic. I love Braun Breaker. I knew he was destined for big things. I just didn't know when. And I definitely didn't expect it to be this soon. Spearing Roman Reigns on the main event of Raw. And I'm like, oh, Breaker and Reigns is a cool feud. I like this. That's a cool feud. And then we get what? Punk and Seth again, but with a new wrinkle of Paul being with Seth, and Seth's now a big bad heel. Cool. I'm cool with this. And then Punk is back in the ring. Seth is standing in front of Punk, and people are like, oh, is Braun going to spear Seth? No, he sidesteps Seth and spears Punk. And now I'm like, okay, Braun spears Punk, another big star. And then Seth, looking a little scared at first, eventually drops the act and he hugs Braun. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, what the fuck is going on right now? Y'all, we have a new faction. We have a new group. Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Paul Heyman all come together, raise each other's hands. And I'm like, whoa. Like, they tapped into real life stuff here. Because we knew that Braun Breaker was getting help from Paul Heyman backstage. We knew that Paul Heyman was a big Braun Breaker fan. And when we found that out, we said, sign us up. We said, sign us up for Braun Breaker, Paul Heyman. Make Braun Breaker a Paul Heyman guy. And well, they did it. Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker are now aligned with Paul Heyman as the mouthpiece. And this is so exciting. This is a breath of fresh air. This is a shot in the arm that Raw needs. Judgment Day was the big heel bad faction on Raw. And it seems like now after WrestleMania in particular, they seem to be going into a face run, with Finn Balor eventually turning heel on the group and maybe others. But the group as a whole, Judgment Day, are now a face group from what it seems like. So now there's a big void in terms of we need a new heel faction to lead the charge on Raw and be the big bad group moving forward. Enter Seth Rollins, Paul Heyman, and Braun Breaker. And man, it seems like all signs right now are pointing to Seth and Braun versus Roman and Punk at Backlash. Because the show ends with Seth, Braun, and Paul standing over Roman Reigns and CM Punk lying down on the ground, beaten, bloodied, battered, bruised, whatever. They're not really bleeding, but you get the point. And that visual was crazy because Punk and Roman are two of the most protected, strongest stars that WWE has in their entire roster right now. So to have them laying at the feet of Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker with Paul Heyman by their side, craziness. And so when I first thought that Braun was going to be challenging Jey Uso or going after Penta for the IC title. He's in a much stronger position now than he ever was. And it goes to show that the Intercontinental Championship is truly the tool that Triple H wanted to use to get people from the mid-card to the main event. You had Gunther win the Intercontinental Championship from Ricochet, goes on this record-setting 666-day title reign, dropping the title to Sami Zayn at WrestleMania 40. He immediately wins King of the Ring and moves up to the World Heavyweight title and wins the title. Braun Breaker drops the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania after holding it for, I think, 4 months, around that much. No, more than that. 5-6 months. And he drops it the night after he's in the main event segment spearing Roman Reigns and CM Punk and standing next to Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. Craziness. Crazy escalation for Braun Breaker. A sick addition to Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman's group. And he does not stick out. He blends right in with the biggest stars on Monday Night Raw, and arguably some of the biggest stars in wrestling, period. So you have this group, Seth Rollins, Paul Heyman, Braun Breaker. And there's a lot of talking about what purpose this group is going to serve. Obviously, first and foremost, they are the new big bads on Monday Night Raw that all the baby faces are going to be struggling to face. They're going to suffer from the numbers disadvantage. They're going to suffer from Seth and Braun just being two bad motherfuckers. How are they going to fight back? This could be the faction that builds up for War Games. There's a lot of directions we can take here. And two of the biggest directions that people are talking about are this group taking on the role of Evolution or the Dangerous Alliance, where Paul Heyman just gathers a bunch of people that he loves and wants to work with, and it's all centered around Paul and who he wants to associate with. This could be a really fucking cool Evolution type group. Let's talk about it. So, Evolution, a staple of the post-Attitude, like the early Ruthless Aggression era, post-Attitude era. It was a group of guys that was meant to be the evolution of wrestling. It was put together by Ric Flair at Triple H, and they wanted to find a couple of guys that were younger so they could represent today. The wrestling of today and the future. Ric Flair was a wrestler representing the past, right? Rick was a big star in the territory days in the 80s or 70s and 80s. And Triple H was at the time one of the biggest stars of the early 2000s and from the 90s and the late 90s Attitude Era. And they got a couple of guys, Batista and Randy Orton, that were stars of the future. They were young rookie guys that built themselves up to main event levels. By the time the next era came, they were the staples. And I mentioned that earlier when I talked about Cena, Batista, and Orton. Batista had this feud with Triple H near the end of Evolution where they were talking shit about Batista, and Batista was there, and he eavesdropped and heard them talking about him and about how the plan was to get him to challenge JBL so Triple H wouldn't have to wrestle Batista in WrestleMania after Batista won the Royal Rumble. Batista heard that, he got pissed, and he decided he wanted to challenge Triple H, broke up from the group, all that good stuff. Randy Orton feuded with Triple H as well for the World Heavyweight Championship coming out of the Evolution days. And both guys became massive stars. Batista more of a babyface. Orton was a face. It didn't really work, and he became a heel. But that being said, Evolution worked really well to establish stars of the future using stars of the present day at the time and stars of the past. And I think this faction in particular could do a really solid job of doing the same thing. You have Paul Heyman as the Ric Flair role, the star of the past. Paul Heyman's been around the wrestling world for years, decades. He was Paulie Dangerously. He was the head of ECW. He moves to WWE where he becomes the GM of SmackDown. He's the manager for Brock Lesnar. There's obviously him and Brock Lesnar were very close. And part of Brock's development was all thanks to the mentorship and guidance of Paul Heyman. You have Seth Rollins. Obviously, Triple H and Seth Rollins are super close. There are a lot of comparisons between the guys, both as wrestlers and as people. and also when it comes to how they view the wrestling business as a whole. Both of them are company guys, you know. Seth is big about paying his dues in the business and earning his keep in the business and having the business support him because he supports the business. Very much the same mentality as Triple H. It feels like Seth is jockeying for a position to eventually success Triple H as the head of creative. They're very similar. Seth took a lot of moves from Triple H. You know, Triple H was the King of Kings. Seth was the King Slayer. All of that stuff. And now you have Braun Breaker, who easily takes the role of Batista. The guy who's just bursting at the seams with muscles. He's big. He's a big heavy. He's the one that's going to be the enforcer of the group. And then you have the Randy Orton spot. And I think they're being very particular and very smart with how they have each wrestler in this faction fill each role. Because the spot left to fill is the Randy Orton spot. And there are a few guys that take a little bit of finagling to get to that spot, to take the Randy Orton spot in this faction. Let's talk about Randy Orton at the time. Randy Orton at the time of Evolution was a young blue chip prospect. Obviously, his name preceded him, his father being Cowboy Bob Orton. He's a third generation star, I believe. I believe he was a third generation, probably potentially second, but I believe third generation wrestling star. He was a cocky motherfucker. He was also shredded, you know, not to discredit his physique, but he was definitely notably smaller than Batista, but he was cunning, he was charismatic, he was kind of a snake, you know, for lack of a better term. He was a conniving heel. He went on to be the Legend Killer. He was cocky, arrogant, and then he had the snap and he became the Viper. There are very similar guys that could fill the early stage Randy Orton type role in this faction. 3 of them come to mind. And I'll start with the least likely option for me, and that's Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes, I don't think really needs this group as much as the other names that I'm about to list. I think Carmelo Hayes could be successful on his own. I also think that there's a better direction for Carmelo Hayes, and I think it's good that he stays away from a faction with Braun Breaker, because if you followed their NXT 2.0 days when they were coming up through NXT, they had very similar careers. They were the Cena and Batista of NXT 2.0. Megastars, their names preceded them. They came up and rose really fast. At the time when Braun was NXT champion, I believe Carmelo was the North American champion carrying that division. But I think Carmelo can stand on his own. And I also think that there's a story with him brewing, potentially with, if they call up Trick Williams on Friday Night SmackDown this week, I think Trick could save Carmelo from this team with The Miz and have both of them go on a heel run together, Carmelo and Trick on the main roster. If not, I think Carmelo would still is still fine without them. I think he stands on his own as a singles heel without this faction. He can be a solid mouthpiece. He's been fighting all the big names, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes. Braun Breaker hasn't had that yet, and that's why this faction is doing him such a good favor, such a strong favor, such a strong service. But Carmelo, I think he's already been mixing it up with the top names. He's already cutting really solid promos. They already see enough in him, I think, to where he doesn't need a group. And I think that he might get lost in that shuffle, in that group. Next, we have the next likely option. If they go the Evolution route, you know, talking about Paul being the past and Seth the present and Braun and this other person being the future, I think it'd be really cool if they pulled from NXT. What if they pulled Ethan Page? All ego Ethan Page would be a solid addition to this group, would be a solid representation of the future, and it wouldn't really step on Braun's toes too much, because Braun could still rise up and be the future star, but it's not like with Orton and Batista, they were both stars of the same time. They would both become stars during the same time period, and that was great, but I think it'd be cool to have a thing where it's like stages, right? Paul Heyman was 2 eras ago. Seth was last era. Braun is this era. And then this guy is the next era, Ethan Page. My only hesitation is that there's really no connection with Ethan Page and anyone else in this group. The reason this person is number one is because this person has connections with someone in this group already. Deep ties. Maybe not super deep, but past storyline ties. And that is Austin Theory. Austin Theory would be fantastic in this group. He has already been a star. He's already mixed it up with the top stars. The problem is he didn't stay there. He moved back down the card. He beat John Cena at WrestleMania 39. I almost messed that up. He beat John Cena at WrestleMania 39. But from there, he kind of fell back down the card and got mixed in with the tag division with Grayson Waller. And some people said, why not bring Grayson Waller in too? No, I don't think that's the move. What I think the move is a very similar way that Rhea joined the Judgment Day for Austin Theory to join this new faction with Seth and Paul. And that would be to turn on Grayson Waller to then join this faction in the same breath, in one fell swoop. We've talked plenty on this platform, on this podcast, about the potential for Austin Theory to turn face and betray Grayson Waller and break up their team. But what we haven't talked about is, what if this team breaks up, A-Town Down Under, that is, breaks up, and he, in theory, actually turns into the heel? Grayson probably would also stay heel somehow, maybe, but it'd be interesting to see how he turns face. I think it'd be interesting to see Theory turn on Waller, join this faction, and restore the connection that he already has with Seth Rollins. Think back to the Messiah days of Seth Rollins, when he had this, they wanted to build a faction around the Messiah Seth Rollins. They wanted to put him with AOP. And they had Buddy Murphy with him, now Buddy Matthews with him. And then at one point, Austin Theory was in this group. And it was Seth, Buddy Murphy, Austin Theory. There's already history. You could have a segment where Seth pulls Austin Theory aside and is like, man, I know what you're capable of. Join us. You can join us and be carried into the future. And find your potential. You beat John Cena at WrestleMania. Come rediscover yourself with us. And then eventually you have Theory turn on Waller and join this group. I think that's the move. Because I do think that Seth, Braun, and Paul are already a solid faction. But having Paul be the third man holding up their hands feels a little out of place. I think Paul will be the mouthpiece, but I do think there is room in this group for one more. And Austin Theory being in this group, I think, is the right move. I think that this faction in particular is going to be, well, the formation of it is going to be a defining moment for years to come in the WWE, in pro wrestling. It is the most excited I have been about a storyline in the last few months. More exciting than any story going into WrestleMania 41, I think. Because the possibilities here are endless. And I am so excited to see where this goes and see how this shapes up the road to SummerSlam. I do think that SummerSlam is going to be a bigger show than WrestleMania 41. It's 2 nights. It's in New York City, well, New Jersey, but it's right outside of New York City. And I think they're going to want to make this one big if they want to prove to the world why SummerSlam needs to be a 2-night show. Y'all, I think that's a great place to stop. But I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. If you're still watching at this point, really, really appreciate it. My voice is getting shot from yapping this much. And, man, it's just been It's been a while since I've been this excited to be able to talk for an hour and a half straight, solo, about wrestling. But this Monday Night Raw alone warranted a whole episode dedicated to it, in my opinion. So I wanted to get it out there. And also because I labeled the WrestleMania Fallout as a bonus episode, we had to get the main show out there. So this is it this week. But y'all, if you want to support myself, Emil, Yusuf, the rest of the guys on the team, you can do that by following us everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and leave us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. Tell us what you want to see out of this show. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. Any and all feedback helps us, and it's so much appreciated. We can't thank you all enough. You can also find us in video format on YouTube. We're at Kickout Club on YouTube. Give us a subscribe, like the videos, leave some comments. Seriously, it all means the world and it all helps. The bigger we grow this community, the more fun it's going to be for all of us to talk about what we love. And you can follow us on TikTok to get all the short form content. We'll make some clips out of this. Any long form content we make clips out of, and we put it on our TikTok page. So go follow us at Kickout Club over there as well. I made some bonus ones this week too, actually. Made some green screen instant reaction types of things. We did one for WrestleMania, the ending of WrestleMania, and also for the ending of the Raw after WrestleMania, talking about this new group with Seth and Paul and Braun and all that stuff. So if you like all that stuff, it really means the world if you support. And y'all, that's going to do it for me. Again, my name is Tino or Tyler. You can follow us everywhere. You can follow me on all social media platforms as well. And y'all, otherwise, thanks so much for watching this week. We'll be back with a full cast probably next week. I hope so. I haven't looked at my calendar. I got to try and figure it out when we can record. But that's a problem for next week. Y'all, have a great week. Never stay down. We'll see y'all later.